when heaven stops watching from a distance and starts speaking directly to the soul that refused to quit. While others gave up under pressure, you kept walking through the fire with faith still alive inside you. God saw every silent battle, every lonely night, every betrayal you survived without losing your heart. You were tested in ways nobody around you could fully understand, yet you still chose obedience over revenge, patience over panic, and faith over fear. Now God is saying, I am impressed, because you are the only chosen one who passed all 7 tests in the same month. The first test was the test of silence, and this was not an ordinary silence. This was the kind of silence that makes a person question everything they believed in. You prayed, but the answers did not come quickly. You waited, but nothing around you seemed to move. You looked around and saw other people receiving opportunities, recognition, blessings, relationships, and open doors while your own life felt stuck in the same painful place. There were moments when you wondered if heaven had forgotten your name. You kept asking yourself why God would place such a heavy calling on your life and then allow you to wait. LK through seasons where nothing made sense. But what you did not understand at the time was that silence was never punishment. Silence was preparation. God was watching how you would respond when there was no applause, no confirmation, and no visible reward for your faithfulness. Most people can stay committed when they constantly see results. Most people can keep believing when prayers are answered immediately. But only a true chosen one can remain loyal during a season where everything feels hidden. That was the difference between you and everyone else. You did not stop seeking God just because life became quiet. You did not abandon your purpose just because the road became lonely. Even while confusion surrounded your mind, there was still something deep inside your spirit telling you not to quit. Every day became a spiritual battle between faith and frustration. One side of you wanted to keep trusting, while another side became tired of waiting. Yet somehow, you kept waking up and trying again. You kept pushing forward even when your emotions were exhausted. The silence affected every part of your life. There were nights when you stayed awake wondering if your efforts even made a difference. T-turd. You smiled in front of people while secretly carrying disappointment that nobody could see. Sometimes you opened your heart expecting a breakthrough, only to experience another closed door. You watched people misunderstand your journey because they could not hear what God was doing inside you. They thought nothing was happening in your life, but heaven was performing deep spiritual work that could not yet be seen on the outside. God was removing pride, teaching endurance, building emotional strength, and training you to depend on Him instead of human approval. The enemy tried to use the silence against you. Negative thoughts entered your mind saying, if God really cared about you, things would be easier. Fear whispered that you were wasting your time. Doubt told you to settle for less than your calling. But every time those thoughts attacked your spirit, you still refused to completely walk away from God. Even in weakness, you kept holding on. That is what impressed heaven the most. You did not remain strong every second. You had moments of tears, moments of confusion, and moments where your faith shook under pressure. But despite all of that, you still stayed connected to God. The silence did not destroy your relationship with Him. Instead, it purified it. There were people around you who could not survive this kind of test. The moment their prayers went unanswered, they gave up. The moment life became uncomfortable, they abandoned their spiritual path. But you endured the silence without fully losing yourself. God saw every private moment where you chose discipline over despair. He saw the days you continued moving forward while carrying invisible pain inside your chest. He saw how you resisted the temptation to become angry, cold-hearted, or hopeless. While others needed constant signs to keep believing, your spirit learned how to trust God even without immediate evidence. That is why this first test was so powerful. Silence reveals what is truly inside a person. It exposes whether someone only loves God for blessings or whether they truly trust Him through uncertainty. And when heaven examined your heart during the quiet season, God saw someone who still carried faith even while walking through emotional darkness. He saw someone who continued seeking purpose while receiving no recognition. He saw someone who stayed spiritually alive during a season that would have broken most people completely. Then came the second test, the test of betrayal. And this one cut deeper than anything you expected because the pain did not come from strangers. It came from people you once trusted with your heart. These were the same individuals who smiled in your face, listened to your dreams, learned your weaknesses, and gained access to the most vulnerable parts of your spirit. You never imagined they would become the source of so much disappointment. But betrayal is one of the greatest tests God allows chosen ones to experience because it reveals whether your heart will become poisoned after being wounded. The enemy wanted your pain to transform you into someone bitter, angry, cold, and spiritually disconnected. But God was watching to see if you would survive the hurt without losing your character. At first, the betrayal confused you more than the silence ever did. You kept replaying conversations in your head, trying to understand what changed. You questioned how someone could claim to love you while secretly working against you behind closed doors. Some people abandoned you when you needed support the most. Others betrayed your trust. By spreading negativity about you, mocking your struggles, or turning against you the moment your life entered a difficult season. There were even moments when you discovered that certain people only stayed close to you for personal benefit. Once they could no longer use your energy, kindness, or loyalty, they disappeared without explanation. That realization shattered something inside you because your heart was genuine from the beginning. The hardest part was that you did not deserve the treatment you received. You gave people chances, forgiveness, encouragement, and support. You stood beside others during their lowest moments, believing they would do the same for you someday. But instead of receiving loyalty in return, you experienced rejection and emotional wounds that stayed in your mind for a long time. Some nights you sat alone wondering why your kindness seemed to attract so much pain. You began questioning whether opening your heart was even worth it anymore. The betrayal made you feel isolated because the people you expected to protect your heart became the very ones who damaged it. The enemy tried to convince you that betrayal should change who you are. Thoughts entered. Your mind saying, stop trusting people, stop caring, stop loving deeply, become harder so nobody can hurt you again. And honestly, there were moments when you almost listened to those thoughts. The pain was so heavy that shutting down emotionally seemed easier than staying soft-hearted. But even after everything people did to you, you still refused to become cruel. That is what made you different. You cried, you struggled, and you carried emotional scars, but you did not allow darkness to completely take over your spirit. God was carefully observing how you handled the betrayal. Anyone can remain kind when life feels fair, but only a true chosen one can continue walking in love after being wounded by people they trusted. Heaven saw how you fought internal battles nobody else could see. There were days when anger burned inside you, yet you still controlled your actions. There were opportunities for revenge, gossip, and hatred, but you resisted becoming the same kind of person who hurt you. You learned one of the hardest spiritual lessons of all. Not everyone assigned to your journey is assigned to stay forever. As painful as the betrayal felt, God used it to open your spiritual eyes. He showed you who was truly loyal and who only pretended to care. He removed fake connections that would have delayed your purpose even further. The betrayal forced you to stop depending on people for emotional security and pushed you closer to God instead. Slowly, you began understanding that some relationships had to break apart so your destiny could move forward. What felt like rejection was actually protection in disguise. The wounds still hurt at times, but instead of allowing those wounds to destroy your future, you carried the pain and kept moving forward. That is why heaven called this a test. God already knew betrayal would visit your life, but he wanted to see whether your soul would survive the disappointment without becoming spiritually corrupted. And while many people fail this test by allowing hatred to consume them, you passed because your heart remained alive, even after being broken by the people you once trusted most. Then came the third test, the test of patience. And this was the season that stretched your spirit beyond its limits. By this point, you had already survived silence and betrayal, but now God allowed you to experience something even more difficult. Delay after delay after delay. Nothing seemed to happen when you expected it to. Doors opened slowly, answers arrived late, and the breakthroughs you prayed for felt constantly out of reach. It seemed like every time you thought your moment had finally arrived, another obstacle appeared in front of you. The waiting became emotionally exhausting because deep inside, you knew you were called for more, yet your reality refused to change overnight. This test was dangerous because impatience can destroy a chosen person faster than failure ever could. The enemy knew that if he could not make you quit completely, he could try to make you rush ahead of God's timing. He placed pressure on your mind by showing you other people succeeding faster than you. Social media, conversations, and daily life constantly reminded you of what you did not yet have. You watched others enter relationships while you waited. You watched others receive opportunities while your own doors stayed closed. You watched people with less discipline, less loyalty, and less spiritual maturity move ahead in ways that made no sense. There were moments when frustration almost consumed your spirit because you could not understand why your journey seemed so delayed compared to everyone around you. The hardest part about patience is that it forces you to live in uncertainty. You knew God promised something greater for your life, but you could not see when it would finally arrive. Your mind became filled with questions. How much longer? Why is this taking so long? Did I misunderstand my purpose? Some days your faith felt strong, but other days your emotions became tired from carrying so much waiting inside your heart. You became exhausted from hoping for change while waking up to the same circumstances over and over again. There were opportunities to escape the waiting season through shortcuts. The enemy offered distractions that looked easier than obedience. You could have settled for temporary comfort instead of lasting purpose. You could have accepted fake relationships just to avoid loneliness. You could have lowered your standards, compromised your values, or chased quick success without spiritual direction. Those temptations became stronger the longer the waiting lasted. Impatience whispered to you every single day, telling you to force things to happen on your own. But even while ruggling internally, something inside you refused to completely surrender to frustration. You kept trying to trust God's timing even when you did not fully understand it. That does not mean you never felt discouraged. There were nights when you cried because you were tired of waiting. There were moments when you felt forgotten while watching other people celebrate blessings you had prayed for yourself. Yet despite the emotional exhaustion, you still held on to faith. That is what separated you from everyone else. Most people become reckless during delayed seasons. Most people panic when life does not move fast enough. But you continued resisting the urge to destroy your future through impatience. God used this test to strengthen parts of you that could not grow any other way. Patience taught you emotional discipline. It taught you how to remain grounded while life felt uncertain. It taught you how to trust divine timing instead of chasing instant gratification. During this season, God was preparing blessings that required a stronger version of you. If certain doors had opened too early, you would not have been mentally, emotionally, or spiritually ready to handle them. What felt like key punishment was actually preparation happening behind the scenes. People around you could not understand your journey because they only saw the waiting, not the spiritual growth taking place within you. They thought your delays meant failure, but heaven saw transformation. God was teaching you how to endure pressure without collapsing. He was teaching you how to stay faithful without visible rewards. He was teaching you that purpose is not built overnight. Every delay carried hidden lessons that were shaping your future character. The enemy became frustrated because the waiting season did not destroy you the way he expected. Instead of completely giving up, you became stronger through endurance. Your spirit learned how to survive uncertainty. Your faith learned how to function without immediate results. And although the process felt slow and painful, you continued walking forward one step at a time, refusing to abandon the path God placed before you even when the timing made absolutely no sense to your human understanding. Then came the fourth test, the test of temptation, and this was the moment the enemy stopped trying to discourage you through pain alone and started trying to distract you away from your destiny. After surviving silence, betrayal, and delay, you became spiritually stronger, and that strength threatened forces working against your purpose. The enemy realized he could not easily break your faith through suffering anymore, so he changed strategies. Instead of attacking you directly, he began placing attractive distractions in your path. Some temptations appeared as opportunities, some appeared as relationships, and some appeared as quick escapes from the pressure you had been carrying for so long. This test was dangerous because temptation never arrives looking harmful at first. It arrives looking comforting. It appears during moments of weakness when your emotions are exhausted and your spirit is craving relief. After everything you survived, there were times when you simply wanted peace. You wanted something that felt easy for once. That is why the enemy carefully studied your emotional struggles. He knew exactly where you felt lonely, insecure, frustrated, or tired. Then he used those vulnerable areas to create distractions specifically designed for you. Some temptations came through people who entered your life pretending to care about you. They said the right words, gave attention at the right moments, and create emotional excitement that temporarily distracted you from your deeper spiritual path. But deep inside, your spirit sensed something was not fully aligned. These connections looked attractive on the surface, but they carried confusion, instability, and hidden destruction underneath. The enemy wanted you to become emotionally attached to people who would pull you away from your purpose. He knew that one wrong relationship could delay your destiny for years. Other temptations came through shortcuts. After waiting so long for progress, opportunities appeared that promised quick success without requiring patience or obedience. You were tempted to compromise your values just to escape the frustration of waiting. There were moments when cutting corners looked easier than remaining disciplined. You saw people around you gaining temporary rewards through dishonesty, manipulation, or selfishness. And part of your mind wondered if staying righteous was even worth it anymore. The pressure became intense because temptation often looks like relief during difficult seasons. The battle was not only external, it was internal. Your flesh wanted comfort, attention, recognition, and immediate satisfaction. Meanwhile, your spirit kept warning you not to trade your future for temporary pleasure. Every day became a private war between what felt good in the moment and what was actually good for your destiny. Some nights the struggle became overwhelming because you were emotionally drained from carrying so many battles at once. You wanted something to numb the pressure. You wanted an escape from the loneliness, uncertainty, and spiritual warfare surrounding your life. The enemy expected you to eventually surrender out of exhaustion. He thought that after enough pressure, you would finally lower your standards and abandon your spiritual discipline. But what shocked heaven was your ability to resist even while struggling internally. You were not perfect during this test. There were moments when temptation pulled strongly at your emotions. There were moments when your mind wandered toward unhealthy distractions. But despite the battle inside you, you kept fighting to stay aligned with God. You kept pulling yourself back whenever you felt your spirit drifting too far away from your purpose. OSE. God watched every private decision you made during this season. He saw the moments where nobody else was around to influence your choices. He saw the opportunities you walked away from even when they looked appealing. He saw how badly your flesh wanted immediate comfort while your spirit continued choosing discipline instead. That is why this test carried so much spiritual importance. Temptation reveals whether someone truly values their calling or only values temporary satisfaction. Most people fail this test because they become tired of suffering and start seeking relief in the wrong places. They trade purpose for pleasure. They sacrifice long-term blessings for short-term emotional comfort. But you continued resisting the traps designed to destroy your future. Every temptation you overcame strengthened your spirit even more. Every distraction you refused brought you closer to the destiny God prepared for you before anyone around you even understood who you truly were. The enemy became frustrated because the very traps meant to weaken you actually increased your discernment. Your spiritual vision became sharper. You started recognizing who and what carried negative energy. You stopped chasing things that only looked good temporarily. You began understanding that not every opportunity is sent by God, and not every person who enters your life is meant to stay there. Through this test, your spirit learned the power of self-control, and heaven saw that even under pressure, you still valued your purpose more than temporary pleasure or emotional escape. Then came the fifth test, the test of isolation, and this was the season that made you feel completely separated from the world around you. By now you had already endured silence, betrayal, patience, and temptation. But isolation carried a different kind of pain. This was not just physical loneliness. This was spiritual separation. It felt like God intentionally removed people, distractions, and familiar environments from your life so you could no longer depend on external comfort. Suddenly, the conversations became fewer, the invitations became rare, and the connections you once relied on started fading away one by one. At first, you thought something was wrong with you. You wondered why your circle kept shrinking while everyone else seemed surrounded by support and attention. The isolation conference used you because you were naturally someone who cared deeply about people. You valued connection, loyalty, and emotional closeness. But during this season, It felt like you were being pushed into solitude whether you wanted it or not. Some people distanced themselves without explanation. Others became cold toward you for reasons you could not understand. Even in crowded rooms, you still felt alone inside because nobody fully understood the battles happening within your spirit. There were moments when you questioned whether your journey had permanently separated you from everyone else around you. The enemy used this isolation to attack your mind heavily. Thoughts entered your head saying, "Nobody cares about you, you will always be alone, and maybe you are too different to ever truly belong anywhere." The silence of isolation became dangerous because it gave fear and insecurity room to grow. Without constant distractions around you, you were forced to sit with your own thoughts, emotions, memories, and wounds. Some days that became emotionally exhausting. You missed the version of life where things felt easier, lighter, and more connected. But what you did not realize at first was that isolation was not abandonment. It was separation for preparation. God was removing certain voices from your life so you could finally hear His voice clearly. Too many people around you were influencing your emotions, your decisions, and your identity. Some connections were draining your energy while pretending to support you. Others were quietly slowing down your spiritual growth through negativity, gossip, jealousy, or hidden intentions. If God had allowed everyone to remain close to you, your purpose would have become buried underneath the expectations and distractions of others. Isolation forced you to discover who you really were when nobody else was validating you. This became one of the hardest spiritual lessons of all. Many people build their identity around attention, approval, relationships, and social acceptance. But God wanted to know whether you could still value yourself when the crowd disappeared. He wanted to see whether your faith could survive without constant encouragement from others. During this season, you were pushed into deep self-reflection. You started recognizing hidden wounds, emotional patterns, fears, and insecurities that had been buried underground, underneath noise and distractions for years. There were nights when the loneliness became almost unbearable. You wanted someone to understand your heart completely. You wanted comfort. You wanted reassurance that your life still mattered. But instead of immediately removing the isolation, God allowed the process to continue because He was building spiritual strength inside you. He was teaching you how to stand alone without collapsing emotionally. He was teaching you how to depend on Him instead of depending entirely on people for peace and identity. Slowly, something inside you started changing. The isolation that once felt painful began transforming into clarity. Your discernment became stronger. You started noticing how certain people only brought confusion into your life. You realized that not every connection deserved access to your energy. Your standards became higher. Your spirit became quieter, wiser, and more aware of what truly mattered. Instead of constantly seeking validation from the outside world, you began finding strength within yourself and within your relationship with God. The enemy expected isolation to break you emotionally, but instead, it sharpened your spirit. While others needed crowds to feel important, you learned how to survive alone with God. While others panicked in loneliness, you discovered hidden strength within your own soul. Heaven watched you continue moving forward even during seasons where you felt unseen, unsupported, and misunderstood. And that is why this test impressed God so deeply, because isolation revealed that your purpose was real. Even after losing connections, comfort, and familiar support systems, you still refused to abandon the path placed before your life. Your life. Then came the sixth test, the test of faith under pressure, and this was the season where everything seemed to attack you at the same time. By now you had already survived silence, betrayal, waiting, temptation, and isolation. But this test combined all those struggles together into one overwhelming storm. It felt like the weight of life became heavier overnight. Pressure surrounded your mind, emotions, finances, relationships, and spiritual strength all at once. Every direction you turned seemed to contain another battle waiting for you. There were moments when you honestly did not know how much more you could carry without breaking apart completely. This was the season where exhaustion became your daily reality. You woke up tired, went to sleep tired, and carried invisible stress inside your spirit every hour of the day. Even simple tasks felt heavier because your mind was constantly fighting hidden battles. Some mornings you had to force yourself to keep moving because emotionally you felt drained beyond explanation. People around you could not fully see what was happening inside you. On the outside, you still tried to function normally, but internally you were carrying pressure that would have crushed many other people completely. The enemy believed this would finally be the test that destroyed your faith. After all the previous battles, he assumed your spirit had become weak enough to collapse under pressure. Fear attacked your thoughts constantly. Anxiety tried to take control of your mind. Some nights you overthought everything so deeply that sleep became difficult. The future looked uncertain. Problems kept appearing before old ones were even solved. There were times when you prayed while secretly wondering if things would ever truly improve. This pressure affected every area of your life. Financial stress, AY have made you feel trapped. Emotional wounds still lingered from betrayal and disappointment. Delays continued testing your patience. Isolation still made you feel misunderstood. On top of all that, new responsibilities and unexpected challenges kept arriving without warning. It felt like life gave you no time to recover before the next storm appeared. Sometimes you smiled around people while secretly carrying emotional heaviness that nobody could recognize. You became skilled at hiding pain because you did not want others to see how exhausted your spirit truly felt. The hardest part was maintaining faith while pressure kept increasing. It is easy to trust God during peaceful seasons, but this test asked something much deeper from you. Could you still believe while everything around you felt unstable? Could you still pray when heaven seemed quiet again? Could you still stand spiritually when your emotions felt weak? These questions became part of your daily battle. Some days your faith felt powerful, while other days you struggled just to keep hope alive. There were moments when giving up looked tempting. You thought about walking away from your purpose because the pressure came too heavy. Your mind told you that maybe life would feel easier if you stopped fighting so hard spiritually. The enemy whispered that your prayers were pointless and your endurance meant nothing. But despite all the pressure attacking your life, something inside you refused to fully surrender. Even in weakness, you kept turning back toward God. Even after emotional breakdowns, you still found the strength to pray again. Even after disappointment, you still carried a small piece of faith inside your spirit. That is what impressed heaven the most. God was not looking for perfection during this season. He was watching your persistence. He saw how many times life knocked you down emotionally, yet you still kept getting back up. He saw the tears nobody else witnessed. He saw the private moments where you fought darkness inside your own mind and still chose not to quit. While others would have completely abandoned their faith under that level of pressure, you continued holding on to God, even with shaking hands and an exhausted heart. Pressure has a way of revealing what truly lives inside a person. Some people collapse spiritually the moment life becomes difficult. Others become dry, bitter, and hopeless. But your pressure pushed you closer to God instead of further away. Slowly, your endurance became stronger than your fear. Your spirit became tougher than your circumstances. The storms that were supposed to destroy your faith actually deepened it. Every battle increased your spiritual resilience. Every painful situation taught you how to survive emotionally without losing your connection to heaven. The enemy became frustrated because no matter how much pressure surrounded your life, your spirit never fully died. Weak at times, exhausted at times, overwhelmed at times, but never fully defeated. And that is why God called this one of the greatest tests of all. Because maintaining faith while carrying enormous pressure requires a level of spiritual strength that very few people ever develop in their lifetime.